Good morning, grade fives. Happy Wednesday. Today is your last math lesson for the week, and then we're sort of done graphing. So it's a very short section of this unit, but graphing is. So it's grade five. It's just single bar graphs and double bar graphs. But today's topic of double bar, we're still continuing double bar graphs. We're talking about double bar graphs. So as you remember, let me quickly review our lessons from yesterday. So remember, we did a double bar graph. The point of a double bar graph is to compare two different categories of information in one place. So instead of me having, because I could have totally have one graph for this and then create another graph for this information, right? I could have had one graph, a single bar graph and a single bar graph. But that's annoying. Instead, you just put them all together and you can compare in one single graph. So that's what we did yesterday. Today, and hopefully you had a chance to do the textbook question on your own. Today, is also talking about double bar graphs, but today's lesson is trying to interpret double bar graphs. What does interpret mean? Interpret basically just means to make sense, to understand. So if I'm interpreting something, I am understanding what's going on and then making some conclusions about it, right? Remember the math check-in last week, I asked about what were some of your conclusions and findings about it. That's basically just saying, after finishing your double bar graph and having these bars, what does that tell me? What is the information you can pull from it, right? So all you need today really is your math notebook and a pencil, and we're not drawing anything today, and your textbook later. We'll do some textbook questions after. So our title is Interpreting Double Bar Graphs. Your I can statement is I can. We can say I can draw, and not literally draw, but I can draw conclusions. I can draw conclusions from reading a double bar graph. Okay, let me explain what that means. Okay, write that down. Interpreting double bar graphs. I can draw conclusions from reading a double bar graph. Now, a few things. You're not actually drawing anything and you're not actually reading anything. To draw conclusions just means to understand and pull out information. To draw a conclusion, which just means to make some conclusions. I can make some conclusions from reading a double bar graph. You're reading it in the sense that it does sort of tell a story, and I will say that. Now, and I'll write just this down as I guess some points, so maybe just some notes. So the idea is we want to compare the bars and find some conclusions. So now I'm not going to draw that bar graph from yesterday. I want you to write that down. So we want to compare the bars and find some conclusions. And usually those conclusions looks at things like, so maybe you want to look at some possible conclusions are, so some possible conclusions could be looking at maybe who had the highest and whatever it is. The lowest. Maybe you look at totals. And I'll go through this, don't worry. Just write this down so I can explain each one. Maybe I want to talk about some totals. Maybe I want to look at some differences. And we'll look at each one of these for our example. Differences. What else? Maybe I want to, and remember, these are all just different comparisons, right? So like, what would you want to find out? Maybe you want to compare, we can say, what else? It's usually those four. Let's leave it those four for now. Okay, so some of the outcomes or some of the conclusions you're trying to find out it depends on the data. So let's go back. I'm going to keep flipping back and forth. Now, so I want you to also keep flipping back and forth. So look at the bar graph from yesterday. We're going to interpret some information. So who had the highest? Okay, let's see. Based on this data information, what could we say? What could we say in regard the highest? So we can say, based on this double bar graph, which sport is liked the most, right? The highest could be the most, the least. Maybe I'll write that down. Highest or the most, whatever it is, whatever your situation is. So which sport has the most students' interest, right? Which sport is liked the most by the grade 11 and 12s? And right from looking at the graph, your eye should have shot up to this bar, right? It's the tallest bar. It's the longest one. So we know that this has the most students. So we can say right away, football is the most liked sport for grade 11s and 12s. Now, it's the same. You can also make another interpretation and say football is a sport that's liked the most with grade 11s and grade 12s because the pink bar is the highest for football and yellow is also the highest for football. So that's two conclusions, right? That football has the most amount of students, right? But also that football for grade 11 and 12 is the most favorite. That's two interpretations. What's another one? Let's look at maybe the least. So which sport was liked the least for grade 11? Let's do grade 11 first. So look at the bars. Which sport was liked the least for grade 11? So you're looking at all the pinks and you're looking at the shortest bar. So it would be hockey. So hockey is the least favorite sports for grade 11. What is the least favorite sport for grade 12 though? Okay, so the least favorite for grade 11 is pink over here. It's the smallest one, right, of all the pinks. But what's the least favorite for grade 12? So I look at my yellows, which is the shortest yellow bar. Badminton. So there's a comparison right there. So grade 11's least favorite sport is hockey, but grade 12's least favorite sport is badminton, right? Right there, there's a big comparison. That is interpreting data. That's a conclusion. What if I wanted to know some differences? So let's look at some differences. So what is the difference between grade 11s in hockey and grade 11s in football? What could I make it? So listen to my question. What is the difference between the students, grade 11 students who like hockey and grade 11 students who like football? So what is something I could say? One, I could say that grade 11s, more grade 11s like football, less grade 11s like hockey. I could say that only 3 students like hockey and 12 students like football. Another thing I can say is that if I can look at the difference, and remember when I said differences, you can actually subtract, and I can say since there's only 3 students who like hockey, but there are 9 students who like football, that there are, 12 students, that there's 9 more students that like football than hockey. Now that's a little bit more advanced, but you can do subtraction, right? What if I wanted to say, another thing was looking at totals. What if I wanted to look at totals? I wanted to say, how many students in total like swimming? What would I do then? So I want to say, how many students in total like swimming? So I would go to my swimming section, which is here. I want to know how many students in total, because I know how many students, so I know that 4 students like, 4 students in grade 11 like swimming and 4 students in grade 8 students in grade 12, but I want to know in total. As soon as you see total, that you know you're adding something. So that would be, I need to add 4 plus 8. What's 8 plus 4? 12. So I can say 12 students in total like swimming. What if I said how many students in total like hockey? How many students in total, so grade 11 and 12, like hockey? What would that be? So you would say, okay, 3 plus 6. So in total, that would be 9. 9 students in total like hockey. I might say, how many students in total like badminton? Go to badminton. How many students are here? 6 plus 2, 8. So 8 students in total like hockey. That's right, badminton. Now, what if I say, how many more students like badminton? No, how many, sorry, let's go back. Okay, let's look at badminton. What if I want to say, how many more grade 11 students like hockey? Sorry, I keep going to hockey. Badminton than grade 12. What if I want to compare these two? So how many more students in grade 11 like badminton than grade 12? Then I need to subtract, right? And I need to say 6 subtract 2, which is 4. So I can say 4 more grade 11 students like grade badminton than the grade 12 students. Okay, that's all this interpreting data is. It's just looking at a graph and like pulling out information that you can see. There's no right or wrong way of doing it. If I said, if I asked you, I said, oh, give me one finding. What is one conclusion you can draw? There's so many. You can say that football is the most liked sport for grade 11 and 12s. There you can talk about totals, right? There's, what was it here? 6 and 4, right? 6 and 4, yeah. There are 10 students in total who like hockey. There are 12 students in total that like swimming. So it's just pulling out whatever information. I might ask you the question, and that's today's question for today's work on in your textbook question is I will give you a graph and I'm going to ask you some questions, right? I'm going to ask you some questions and say, you know, who had the most or who had the least and which is more than that. But it's all there. And that's the reading part. You're not really reading words, but you're reading a graph. That's what it means when you're saying reading a graph. So that's how I just made it, and so that's all, there's no major notes, but that's all the I can statement is. You're drawing conclusions from a double bar graph. You're looking at it and saying, well, what does this tell me? You're asking yourself that question. Other than just colors and bars, what does this tell me? And you draw some conclusions. These are just some examples, just so you can, to get you thinking, but we drew so many more conclusions, right? We looked at totals even, we looked at differences, we can see which one has more or less, and the least favorite sport in grade 11 and the least favorite sport in grade 12, and that's all it is. That's what interpreting data means, okay? So today, and so we've done it for our example. Today, your textbook question is that I'm going to give you, and I think there's 2, and I'll write it down here, your homework. Oops. It's very short, but it's on page 264. So today you're not drawing the graph. So yesterday you got practice on how to draw a double bar graph. Today you're going to just look at a double bar graph that's already made, so yay. But now you're going to draw some conclusions. I'm going to ask you some questions. So it's page 264, number 3 and 5. That's it, just two questions. And they're going to ask you different interpretations. They might ask you which is the greatest, which is the lowest, which is the highest, which one had more. Okay, I'll post the answers later so you can check. If you have any questions, please message me or your teachers, and then we can help you clarify. But that's all for today, right? So interpreting data is just trying to make some understandings, to see the findings, the conclusions. So please finish this. Tomorrow you'll have a quick check-in based on all these things this week, which has really just been graphs, right? All we've done is learn how to make a graph or a double bar graph and a single bar graph. So that's what the quiz will be on for tomorrow, okay? Tomorrow for sure you'll be reading a graph. So make sure you understand how to read a graph or interpret a bar graph. A double bar graph, okay? Let me know if you have any questions, and then I will see you when I see you. Bye. Have a lovely day, grade 5s.